advice for establishing a good messaging strategy? Is that something that you do? Have you got some thoughts on that?
Absolutely. That strategy is so important, and I think I'll start by saying patience is the name of the game. The worst thing in this world is when you accept a connection request and then some automated tool sits behind the background and you get a message in your inbox instantly that's pitching to you. Before anything of a relationship has developed. We all know that's wrong, but we see so much of it. It's weird, isn't it? It happens so much. Every day I get countless numbers of people sending me messages via email or because I've got an open profile, and I just reject them pretty much every time. The right way to do it, in my mind, is just to develop a conversation like it's a human being at the other end. I know this sounds bonkers, but there's a natural order of sequencing, isn't there, of messages that takes place. And I have different sequences, templates, if you like, that I keep, in Word docs or Google Drive or whatever, that I have that I kind of use as a format for the starting answer or moment in a time on a messaging sequence. But you know what? I never cut and paste, and I've done. I always personalize it. This morning, well, it's happened several times already today, where I'm into conversations with people. They've asked me a question. I can't provide a standard messaging template to a question, but if I'm trying to stimulate the conversation, then I try to add something of value. And for my mind, I'd rather spend a couple of minutes on a piece of content in terms of a share of a message with fewer people, but of some meaning to them, than the mass-produced template content that I whack out to hundreds of people. I'm not sure about the people on the call, but most people's business lives are made up by being successful with handfuls of new clients. We don't need dozens, hundreds, thousands of clients. And therefore, my attention is driven to being more personal around that messaging sequence, very much delivered to what I'm seeing about that person. Can I give them some tips around their profile, for example? And at some point on that journey, when I feel as though I've had enough of a conversation, I then begin to ask for something. You can't ask for something before you've given, in my opinion. If I'm giving you value and I've deposited some benefit in our relationship, then you can draw upon the ask. Hey, would you like to see my scorecard? I've created a scorecard on LinkedIn that I've launched recently that's got some really it's got 20 questions that are not, have you got a LinkedIn profile? Really deep questions that ask the more clever questions. And I said, would you like to take my scorecard just to see how you're performing on LinkedIn? And with it comes up some suggestions of what you might then do next to improve. But I wouldn't do that in the first message. Thank you for connecting. Hit my scorecard. Oh, what a killer of a relationship, So I take my time. I do this very patiently. I select who I'm going to build those relationships with. They are my target audience of the future. If I can convert even a small percentage of those people with whom I'm developing that patient, targeted, relevant, authentic messaging, I'll have far greater degrees of success ultimately than spending all that time on blast messaging and automating and whatever. Automation's awful. I don't touch automation. So everything I do is personalized. Be patient. And don't hit the sales button until you're invited to. That's the crunch. If you start selling before you've been asked to pitch, you're just going to damage your relationship, in my opinion, with that client. Now, I know that's not the manner of many people, but it works for me. I've done it for 10 years. I advise many other people to do it that way, and they have a lot of success in the back of it. That's a long answer to the question, isn't it? It's worthy of a deep answer, I think, because it's really important. What's it all about? It's to get into relationships. So that messaging sequence that picks up once you've got a connection over the line, it becomes, the next thing. And by the way, what's the point in having a connection if you're not going to have a conversation? I don't get that either. So, another thing.
I really want to pick up on your use of the word conversation, Nigel, because for me, that's absolutely key. When I think of clients that we've advised on this, those who really are insistent that they want to go in with a heavier, more salesy message, invariably get very, very disappointing results. Whereas those that take our advice and make their messaging really conversational, they will get fantastic results. And it's put yourself in the shoes of the other person. How do you feel when you receive that message? If it feels like, oh, you know, this person's interested in having a conversation with me, that'd be interesting to talk about that, it'd be interesting to jump on a call with them about that, whatever, you know, then you're going to get a lot of people saying yes to that. Whereas if you feel just from receiving the message like you're opening yourself up to being pitched to, that's when you've crossed the line and you're just not going to get the results anymore. So for me, that whole focusing on starting conversations that are talking about the kinds of topics you could help with, so that, you know, ultimately it could turn into a sales conversation, I think that's key. And the other thing I picked up on is, you know, you need the time for people to have got to know you, seen the expertise you share, because once people view you as an expert on a topic, they're much more likely to be receptive when you do approach them versus, I mean, you know, clearly neither of us is going to be recommending pitching people within, you know, the first hours of connecting, but, you know, take that further and say, look, first few weeks of us being in a connected relationship on LinkedIn, all I want is just for us to build some rapport and for you to be exposed to a bit of what it is I do, and hopefully I get to see a bit more about what it is you do.